In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to create labels. Specifically, I'm going to show you how you can create address labels for the stores that are inside of our custdemo database. The first thing we're going to have to do is go ahead and create a new report. So I go to File, New, I select Reports, and then I want to create a new empty report. I'm going to go ahead and save this using the Save As feature. I want it to save in the bin subdirectory, bin, and I'm going to give it a name of Customer Labels. I want to save it inside of the Reports Virtual folder. And now I can go ahead and click OK. My Customer Labels report has been saved appropriately. My next thing is to go to the Data View tab, and I want to open a schema file. I want to go and find my storeorder.rdd. And now I have the fields that I can include in my report. The last thing I want to do, or the last thing I need to do before I start putting fields onto the report, is I need to change the page size for this report. We're going to make the report page size equal to the size of a single label. So I can go File, Report Properties, and go to Paper Settings. Now I'm doing a custom setting. I know that in my example I'm using these Avery 5162 labels, so I know that each label is going to be 1 1/3 inch high and 4 inches across. So let me change its width to 4 inches. Let me change its height to 1.3 inches. Let me go ahead and change the margin within the label itself. I'm going to have it be 0.1 all the way around. And I'll click on OK. Now what you can see is that my report page size has reduced so that it's just showing the size of a single label. The next thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and add my fields and some containers to my report label. So let's start off by looking at the report structure. Under my report structure right now I have a page root. Inside of this page root, I'm going to go ahead and start placing some of the fields that I want to appear. And I'm going to be using dynamic layouting, which means I can use the double click method to add a lot of these objects to my label. So the first thing I'm going to add is my store name. I want it to appear across the top. Now the next line down, I'm going to have the word attention followed by a colon and then followed by the customer contact name. Since I'm going to have two items appearing in this row on my report, I'm going to go ahead and add a container, and I'm going to add a horizontal box. Once I've added my horizontal box, I'm going to go ahead to its properties, and I want my Y size to be max, and I want my X size to be min. With that still selected, I can go ahead and add to this a word box. The word box, I know I'm going to change the text so that instead of saying insert your text here, I want it to say attention and give me a colon. Now after that, the next thing I want to do is put in my contact name. So I go and locate the contact name and I add that to my layout node. I always like to rename my nodes so that they make more sense when I come back later and look inside of this report structure. So this is going to be the attention contact name container. Let me reselect my page root because now I want to go and add my address. I want to add my address to. And then I'm going to put in my city, state, and zip code, but I'm going to put those all inside of a container as well, since I want them to read left to right. So I can select my layout node 2. I'm going to rename this to say city, state, zip container. Then with that highlighted, I'm going to go ahead and add my city. I'm going to add a word box so I can make it a comma. I'm going to add my state. I'm going to add another word box so I can give some spacing in there. And then I'm going to add the zip code. So under my first word box, Move that up. Under the first word box, I'm going to go into the properties, and instead of insert your text here, I'm going to have a comma followed by a space. And then in the second word box, I'm going to, instead of insert your text here, I'm just going to have 2 spaces. Now that I've placed all my fields on the form, I can move that out of the way, and you can better see what my label looks like right now. We now need to integrate our report page into our trigger nodes. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, when do we want this label to print out? Well, since we're only capturing information that's contained within that customer table, in other words, we only capture new information every time the store number changes, we can go ahead and take that page route and we can stick it underneath the store num trigger. And now every time the store number changes, we go ahead and we want the customer information to print out on this label. Now that I have a basic label defined, let me go ahead and save my changes there. And let's go back and modify our report so that it calls this label and prints it out as we expect. So I need to go into my report main module, and I'm going to be having it call, let me close this down, to call my customer list report. So let me go ahead and rename this customer labels, give that a save. However, that's not going to be enough. The other thing we want to be doing here is we want to add reporting API methods that we need to print the labels. So now that I've loaded my report's current settings, then I need to perform some other functions in here. So I need to call my FGL report select logical page mapping, and we set that to labels. We need to call the FGL report set paper margins. And so what are my margins? I happen to know on the Avery labels that I'm using, it's going to be 21 millimeter. And let me put these inside of quotes. 21 millimeter. The bottom is also going to be 21 millimeter. And then I need my left margin, which is only 4 millimeter. And I need my right margin, which is also 4 millimeter. So I have my top margin, my bottom margin, my left margin, and my right margin defined in millimeters. The next thing I need to call is the FGL report configure label output. And so in this, how wide is my paper? Well, my paper is 8.5 inches. What's the height of the paper? It's going to be 11 inches. And then the next two, I can just do null and null. And then the last one, how many labels across? 2 labels across. How many labels down? 7 labels down. So I've added the reporting API methods that I need in order to cause the labels to happen as I expect. It tells me that I'm printing out labels, what are the margins around the labels overall, and then within the 8.5, 11 by page that I have 2 across and I have 7 down. Let me go ahead and save this. And then we'll go ahead and we'll execute the report. So what are some of the things we notice here? Well, one thing we notice is that I put on the store number, I didn't put on the store name. So I'll have to go back in and change that so it's the store name. Another thing is you'll notice sometimes there's a contact name and sometimes there's not a contact name. We'll probably want to set up or format this so that if there's not a contact name, that this line is omitted altogether. Likewise with the second address line, many of these appear not to have a second address, so we'll want to set that up so that second address line doesn't exist. We'll want to go ahead and trim the field so that my Chicago doesn't have a bunch of blank space after it before the comma. And that's some of the things we can do to make the formatting better for these labels as they're printed out. So in order to do the formatting, let me go back to my report itself. Let me go ahead and change my view so that I'm seeing the structure panel again. And I also want to see the properties panel again. So I have my report structure. One of the first things I wanted to do was, I mentioned when we tested it, you saw that I put out the store number and not the store name. So let me go and grab that store name. And place it within. I'm going to then move it up. So we have the store name, and then I'm going to actually delete the store number. The store name is what I was expecting to have up there. If I wanted to do any formatting on that, one thing I could do is I could go and I can add my trim function to the store name. That way, if I later add anything onto the end of this field, it says OK. I know that the store name will be trimmed down. So I've done the trim there. Now the next thing I wanted to do was saying if there is not a contact name, I wanted this line to disappear altogether. So I want not only the contact name to disappear, but I want this attention label to disappear. And the way I do that is I set what's known as a visibility condition on its parent container. So this attention contact name container, this horizontal box, I want to go and I want to set its visibility condition. And the visibility condition that I want to set is if the data.customer.contact name, let me trim this down, and then let me get its length. So that's saying go out there, find that contact name, trim off the white spaces. What is the length? If that length is greater than 0, well then I know a contact name exists and I want this to display. If it's not equal to 0, or if it's 0 or less than 0, then I want it to disappear. So I've set my visibility condition. Greater than 0, keep it. Less than 0, let it disappear. For address 2, I'm just going to go ahead and apply a trim function down here. And click OK. For the city, I knew I wanted to apply a trim function there. I can press OK. Let me go ahead and save. And then let's go ahead and just execute the report again and see where our labels are at now. Now if I look up, the only thing I haven't done yet is I haven't dealt with the address to line. You'll notice in my first one, my contact name, if there was no contact name because of the visibility condition, that disappeared. I'll want that same thing to happen to that address to line. So let me go and locate the address to, find my visibility condition. This time I don't have it inside. Let me close this. It's standing alone as a field. It's not inside any sort of horizontal box container. So I can apply my visibility condition directly to this field. I can go into my function, and I'm saying that if the data.customer.address to, and then I want to apply the trim function to that. And then I want to test its length. Now, if that's greater than 0, I want it to display. Set my visibility condition, save my changes, go ahead and rerun the application. And now you can see the address labels as I expect them to appear. And because I said 2 across, 7 down, if I scroll down, you can see I'm doing 2 across and I'm doing 7 down. And if I was to put in my Avery label paper, my 5162 label paper, then these would print out properly.